Have you ever wondered if someone could blow up the moon? It's a question that has probably crossed many of our minds. After all, it is Earth's largest natural satellite, and it affects our daily lives more than we realize. It controls the tides and even has some impact on our climate. And since the moon is such a huge part of our lives, many people wonder what would happen if it were to cease existing. Well, the good news is that we do want to have to wait until the moon explodes on its own or gets destroyed by an asteroid to find out. Because back in 1958, the United States government actually did plan to blow up the moon. So let us talk about why they wanted to do this, and how close we came to destroying the only thing that is always with us. It was July 26, 1958, and something very important was about to take place. Operation High Jump had been months in the making, and for the first time ever, the U.S. Navy had assembled a massive fleet of ships, aircraft, and submarines for a mission unlike any other before it. They would travel south to the frigid waters off the coast of Antarctica, and then head out into the endless ocean. There, they would conduct a series of tests to ensure the readiness of America's naval forces. However, there was another reason why Operation High Jump was being carried out. Up until now, the US and Soviet Union had kept their nuclear arsenals a secret, but that was about to change. Just 2 days later, the Soviets tested their first hydrogen bomb, and suddenly everything changed. It was an extremely powerful weapon that dwarfed the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II. In fact, it was almost 600 times more powerful than those bombs. And so the US needed to respond. They, too, needed to show the world just how powerful their own weapons were. And so they hatched a plan to use one of their nukes to destroy the moon. Although the idea seems crazy today, back then it was considered a serious option. The scientists and military personnel in charge of planning the tests knew that whatever they were going to do, it needed to be big. They wanted to send a clear message to the Soviet Union that America should not be messed with. So why not blow up the moon? It would certainly get everyone's attention. Of course, this wasn't the real goal. Instead, the US had much more sinister intentions. By using a nuke on the moon, they hoped to cause a large explosion that would make it easier to study the effects of nuclear weapons. That's because no country had ever detonated a nuclear device in space before, so the moon offered a unique opportunity to learn more about the power of these weapons. Additionally, the explosion itself could potentially be used as a powerful propaganda tool against the Soviet Union. If successful, it would show the world just how far ahead of them the US was in terms of nuclear technology. But there was also another more personal reason why the US wanted to blow up the moon. It was partly because of a man named Wernher von Braun. He was a German-American aerospace engineer who was largely responsible for the development of rocket technology in America. Von Braun was brilliant, but he was also obsessed with proving himself to be the best. This was especially true when it came to the space race against the Soviet Union, and he believed that the key to winning it lay in blowing up the moon. When the US first learned about the Soviets testing a hydrogen bomb, von Braun wasted no time in coming up with a plan of his own. He believed that by placing a nuclear device on the surface of the moon and detonating it, he could not only help America win the space race, but also prove once and for all that he was the best engineer in the world. His plan was simple. They would use a modified version of the Jupiter rocket to deliver the bomb to the moon. Then from there, all they had to do was detonate it and watch as the moon exploded into a million pieces. However, not everyone was on board with the idea. Many scientists and military personnel had serious concerns about what would happen if the nuke went off prematurely. Detonation of this magnitude could cause catastrophic damage to not only the moon, but also the Earth. Radiation from the blast could poison the soil and water on our planet, leading to widespread sickness and death. Even worse, the explosion could trigger an ice age which would wipe out most life on Earth. In the end, these concerns proved to be well-founded, as the team in charge of delivering the bomb to the moon made several mistakes while preparing for launch. One of the biggest risks was that the rocket carrying the bomb was not designed to operate in space. This meant that if something went wrong during flight, there was no way to control it. Additionally, the team had underestimated how long it would take for the rocket to reach the moon. They had planned for it to arrive in just 2 weeks, but in reality, it took almost 3 months. This meant that they had to keep the rocket in orbit around the Earth for an extended period of time, which put additional stress on the vehicle and increased the risk of failure, as if things weren't complicated enough already. Shortly after the rocket carrying the bomb to the moon was launched, a new problem arose. The team in charge of tracking the vehicle lost contact with it. They had no idea where it was or if it had crashed into the Earth. For several days, everyone waited anxiously for news of the rocket's whereabouts, but in the end it was found safe and sound in orbit around the globe. However, by this point it was clear that something had to be done to prevent another accident. As the launch date approached, more and more problems were identified with the rocket. Eventually, the decision was made to abort the mission. The rocket was brought back to Earth and stored away, and that could have been the end of the story. But just a few months later, the US decided to try again. This time they sent another rocket to the moon, but this one didn't carry a bomb. Instead, it was equipped with cameras and scientific instruments to study the surface of our natural satellite. When the footage came back to Earth, it was clear that the US had made a terrible mistake. The moon wasn't just a lifeless rock floating in space. It had craters, mountains, and even signs of water. Suddenly, the idea of nuking the moon didn't seem like such a great idea anymore. As it turned out, the US never tried to blow up the moon again. Instead, they focused their efforts on landing astronauts on its surface and exploring what else might be out there in space. Today, we know that the moon is an incredibly valuable resource for humanity. It provides us with minerals, water, and even potential sources of energy. Blowing it up would have been a huge mistake and could have had disastrous consequences for our planet. So next time you look up at the moon, remember that it could have been a lot different. If the US had followed through with its plan to nuke the moon, the world we live in today might not exist. It's hard to imagine a world without the moon. It's been with us for billions of years, and we rely on it for so many things, from controlling the tides to providing us with light in the darkness. But what if the moon suddenly disappeared? If the moon were to disappear, it would cause chaos on Earth. The tides would stop, plants would die, and animals would go extinct. But it wouldn't just be nature that suffered. Humans would also struggle to survive without the moon. We depend on the moon for so much, from keeping our planet stable to providing us with light at night. Without it, we wouldn't be able to survive. What's more, the moon has been a part of human culture for centuries. We've looked to the moon for guidance and inspiration, and it's played a major role in many religions and myths. Even today, we still look up at the moon and marvel at its beauty. It is a reminder of the wonders that exist in our universe and a source of comfort and familiarity in an ever-changing world. Perhaps most importantly, the moon is a symbol of hope. It reminds us that no matter how dark things may seem, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. The moon has been with us for billions of years, and that we can be grateful that it will continue to be a part of our lives for many more billions to come. Now you need to watch. What if the Earth stopped rotating on its axis? Or have a look at what if a black hole appeared on the surface of the sun?